Good evening and welcome. The meeting of the Cleveland County Board of Education for Tuesday, May 30th is called to order. This is a special called meeting to discuss board member conduct as it relates to policy 2120. I'd like to call on Mr. David Pless to share invocation.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, we come to you tonight, Lord. Lord, personally, I'm thankful for this opportunity to stand in front of others and proclaim the name of Jesus, Lord. I just thank you for every opportunity that you give me. And God, I ask tonight that you will be with each and every person here and direct decisions that are made, Lord, and direct people's hearts, Lord. We thank you and we love you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Fitch, if you'd lead the pledge.
Yes, sir. Salute, pledge.
The Cleveland County Board of Education recognizes that, collectively and individually, all members of the board must adhere to a code of ethics as required by General Statute 168-86 and General Statute 115C-47, Item 57, and work together as a body in order to improve public education. Our code of ethics is specifically set forth in Policy 2120. A breach of this code of ethics by any board member may result in disciplinary action. This action may result in sanctions as approved by the majority of the Cleveland County Board of Education, consistent with legal standards. Concerns have been raised regarding how certain board members have responded to the senior prank incident at Burns High School. Our discussion today is limited to board member conduct. This is not a board discussion regarding the senior prank itself. I will ask Dr. Fisher to provide an administrative update on the matter for clarification purposes, but the topic of the happenings during the senior prank is not before the board today. There will be no public participation today, as public participation for May was conducted on May 8th, 2023 during our regularly scheduled board meeting. Per North Carolina General Statute 115C-51, the local Board of Education shall provide at least one period for public comment per month at a regular meeting of the board. So that explains the purpose of tonight's meeting. Next is adoption of the agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
I think I heard Mr. Grigg. Motion by Mr. Fitch, second by Mr. Grigg. Any questions or discussion on the agenda? There is the one item.
Or do we need to make a motion about our 3 minutes speak that we can talk?
I don't understand the question.
Well, it says in our thing that we'd have to, I guess, make a motion about speaking. Can we speak and discuss?
Yes, once a motion is on the floor, and I'm going to go through that after we adopt the
Okay.
agenda.
Just want to make
on the
sure right
rules
off
for
the
the
start.
So those in favor of adoption of the agenda, if you'd raise your hand. That carries 9-0. So to further explain the rules, will follow tonight. So over the past several days, many news articles have been published with quotes from board members. Also, Dr. Fisher, Ms. Sink, and I have received complaints from employees and members of the community expressing concern regarding board member behavior. I will ask Dr. Fisher to provide a brief update regarding the information he can share publicly regarding the Burns High senior prank. This will be for information only. Questions about the prank itself or Dr. Fisher's investigation will be ruled out of order. I will then ask Ms. Sink to provide a summary of those complaints and instruct the board regarding our options. Then it will be up to the board as a self-governing entity to determine what action, if any, we choose to take regarding board members' conduct. Again, I remind the board that this is not a time to discuss the prank itself, but it's limited to board member conduct. If a proper motion is put on the floor and it receives a second, we will allow time for discussion. Each board member will be limited to one round of 3 minutes during the discussion time. Then I'll call for the vote. The information presented by Dr. Fisher and Ms. Sink will be available to the public on board docs sometime tomorrow. So we will begin with Dr. Fisher, if you would provide that administrative update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'll be brief. Burns Senior is wanting to conduct a senior prank at Burns High School. The students were allowed in the building while the principal was on campus. After the students left, the principal checked the building and several things were done in which permission was not given. What started out with a calm and modest plan turned into something it was not intended. Realizing the extent of the prank, the principal stayed and cleaned the majority of the building by herself. The vast majority of the prank had been cleaned up by the time students and staff got to school on Friday morning. Some cleanup was still needed when staff arrived that morning. The principal sent information to the staff early on that Friday morning. There were a few items damaged, but not nearly to the extent reported by some outlets. Other reports, such as the cameras being disabled, are not accurate. Due to the inaccuracy of some reports, the misinformation and other unsubstantiated claims, the review of this incident has been a challenge.
Thank you, Dr. Fisher. And I'll call on Ms. Sink to present information to the board.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for your time and attention. As I review the summary of information that was previously provided to you, I believe you should have a copy in front of you. If you don't, let me know. I'll make sure you get that. Everybody have one?
Can you pull the microphone just a little closer?
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. The Cleveland County Board of Education is a self-governing board in most instances, including this one. We are charged with governing, y'all are charged with governing yourselves as defined by policy 2120, which you also should have a copy of. That is our board member code of ethics. That's our standard by which we must adhere. As a way of background, as briefly mentioned by Dr. Fisher, week before last there was a senior prank that took place at Burns High School. Since that time, many news articles have been circulated, social media posts have been made, and we are not here tonight to hash out what did or did not happen during that instance. That matter is under investigation by school administration, nor are we here to discuss any personnel issues related to that matter, as that would be inappropriate to do in an open session. What we are here to discuss tonight, as alluded to by Chairman Queen, is board member conduct. Unfortunately, over the past several days, Dr. Fisher and I have received a total of 8 complaints outlining concerns with board member conduct. I have shared those complaints with the specific board members referenced, and also with the board as a whole. So a copy of those correspondences are in your packet. You'll see that. I think it's about the 4th page in. The board as a whole determined that these matters are worthy of discussion, and hence this special called meeting was noticed and set for tonight. I will briefly address each of the 8 complaints received. Mr. Blanton, I see you doing that. Can you hear me okay? Not too good?
Turn me up a little.
I'll speak up a little bit too. The first email in your packet was a complaint against Mr. Grigg from a Burns High School employee. There was the second email I received requesting reprimand against Mr. Grigg from a member of the community. That's labeled email 2. Email 3 is the email expressing concern from a Burns High School employee, one whose classroom was directly affected. I also received an email from a concerned parent regarding behavior of Mr. Grigg and Mr. Blanton. That's email 4. Additionally, I received an email from a Burns High School senior. That's email 5. And a Burns High School parent, email 6, with both concerning Mr. Grigg's behavior and information that was shared with the media. I received an email from Cleveland Community College trustee member with a complaint against Chairman Queen regarding an email that was sent to Board of Trustees in his capacity as a trustee. And finally, received an email from the lead custodian at Burns High School with concern about all board members who spoke to the media regarding the senior prank, and that's email number 8. So, like I said, you've got the actual words of those emails in your packet. The board's objective now is to review those complaints as well as any behavior that has been demonstrated by board members in their interactions with the media, staff, and community, and essentially compare it against the Code of Ethics to determine as a collective body if there's been a violation. So if you'll look to your policy 2120, I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit. I've, for purposes of efficiency, grouped the categories kind of into 5 sections. So the first section that I would draw your attention to is the responsibility to model civility and to conduct your dealings in a professional manner as board members. That you can find as number 4 and also number 20 in the Board Member Code of Ethics. Based on the emails received, email 1 indicates that Mr. Grigg had numerous conversations on social media back and forth, name calling and cursing. Email 2, a concern was raised that as an elected official that represents Cleveland County Schools, it's concerning that publicly on social media, Mr. Grigg would engage in back and forth banter with community members. And then email 5, that Mr. Grigg would use a few choice words and vulgar connotation, and questioning if that is appropriate for someone who represents Cleveland County Schools. So I know it's a lot of back and forth, but that's my concern with Standard 4 and Standard 20 and how it relates to the complaints that were submitted. Jumping to the second topic, and we've kind of addressed civility, professionalism. The second topic being standard number 5, that we are to remember at all times that individual board members have no authority outside of the meetings to represent the board unless expressly authorized by the board as a whole to do so, and must conduct their relationships with staff, citizenry, and local and news media accordingly. That's going to be our kind of second topic to address. There are concerns that quotes in the news articles are not clear as to whether the quoted board members are speaking in one's individual capacity or on behalf of the board. Unfortunately, in this instance, intent doesn't necessarily matter, whether the board member intended to speak on their behalf, individual capacity, or the board as a whole. It's more how it's portrayed and perceived. And so in email 3, there was a concern that Mr. Grigg was portraying the classroom of the teacher the photo was taken of the classroom, and this is the teacher who conducts her class in that room, saying that I guess it was an incorrect perception that her classroom was harmed and that she wanted to make that clear to everyone. You'll also see in the back of your packet behind the various emails, I've collected just a sampling of news articles. We've got one from WSOC, one from Charlotte Observer, one from the Shelby Star, one from Newsbreak, and one from Daily Mail. I don't claim that this is every article written on the subject, but just enough to demonstrate where there may be cause for concern as it relates to how the standards of our Code of Ethics were followed or not. In the Daily Mail article, there's a quote that says, "When I first saw that, I was very upset." This is a quote from Mr. Blanton talking to the Charlotte Observer. That should not have happened, especially a principal giving kids authorization and then not being there supervising that. In an article to WSOC, Mr. Grigg states, he's convinced someone on the staff played a role and must be held accountable. We make sure that this kind of stuff never happens again. Take this incident right here and make an example of this incident. Those quotes, and I know it's difficult because while they may not have necessarily said it directly, that's what was printed, and there is concern and confusion as to whether those board members are speaking on their own individual capacity or on behalf of the board. And it kind of overlaps into the next section that I'm going to address, which is confidentiality of information. Under Standard 6 of the Code of Ethics, we must respect the confidentiality of information that's privileged under the law and refrain from unauthorized disclosure of matters that are discussed in the closed session. So while I'm not going to touch anything that was discussed in closed session, there are references to closed session in the articles. Also, beyond that, references to students, references to personnel by individual board members in a media article would be deemed inappropriate if not done so with the authorization of the board as a whole to speak on that topic. Moving on to the fourth category. So we've kind of got, I'll review, I know it's a lot of information. We've got the civility, professionalism. We've got speaking on behalf of the board as a whole when not authorized to do so. We've got disclosure of confidential information. And then the fourth topic being standards 7, 14, and 19, which, to summarize it, y'all may be more familiar with our policy 2122. Is essentially when you receive information about our students or personnel, it needs to be directed to Dr. Fisher. That's his jurisdiction. I know we've talked about this on different occasions, but just as a refresher, if there's a student issue or a personnel issue that goes before school administration and it's investigated, handled, and an administrative decision is made, and whoever is involved has an issue with that decision and appeals that decision, it would come before the board, and we, in our quasi-judicial function, would hear that matter. So if we've already kind of dove into that topic, there is presented a significant conflict. So in the Charlotte Observer article, there was discussion of things that were done by students, by Mr. Blanton and Mr. Grigg, and commentary about being upset with the decisions of those students and the decision of the principal. Again, matters that aren't appropriate for board members to be discussing in public, especially while under investigation by school administrators. In the Shelby Star article, and there's a quote that says, in photos and videos shared by a Board of Education member, Ronnie Grigg, students are seen running and sliding through some type of substance on the hall floors among a scattering of desks, chairs, and what appears to be toilet paper. Some students pose with graffiti on the walls and mirrors. Other photos depict overturned desks and trash cans. The quote goes on, but Mr. Grigg admits to receiving photos and text messages and videos early Friday morning from what allegedly occurred Thursday around 9 p.m., indicating that the media was aware of information that should have been sent to Dr. Fisher upon receipt. And I do understand that materials were turned over at a later time, so no accusation of that, but just the fact that it's being discussed in the media while under investigation by school administration is essentially usurpation of the superintendent's responsibilities. And then finally, kind of the fifth category I'd like to address is found in Standard 16, and that's that board members are to take no private action that will compromise the board or administration. So, to sum it up, the concern is that public statements expressing an opinion about pending items of school business can be viewed later as evidence of bias. Like in the example I gave, if a matter came before the board on appeal and it's already been stated in a news article how a board member feels about a particular staff member, that puts us in a very compromising position. Also can be confusing as to whether the individual member is speaking on their own behalf or on the behalf of the board, but without authorization to do so. Unauthorized actions, again, just create that confusion. In the WSOC article, Mr. Grigg was quoted saying, he's convinced someone on the staff played a role and must be held accountable. We make sure that kind of stuff never happens again. Take this incident right here and make an example. In email 4, the complaining party indicated that for board members to continue talking about terminating a wonderful leader who has tirelessly worked to improve the academics and student experience at Burns High over needless speculation of what could have happened seems highly short-sighted and not in the best interest of Cleveland County Schools. And then in email 6, that Mr. Grigg's actions of calling, emailing various news outlets were unacceptable. Quotes on the news outlets were not accurate, and no good comes from making our school system look bad. And I'm paraphrasing here at the end, but just talking about the Facebook back and forth. But I would also note, while not specifically in our policy, not specifically in our Code of Ethics policy 1010 addresses board authority and duties, and as board members, there is a duty to be an advocate for the Cleveland County school system. And without going back through the specific examples, there's cause for concern that the information provided was not advocacy, but rather created confusion and cause for concern. So that is essentially the presentation of information and the complaints received. Just again, for clarity, these were complaints received by myself or Dr. Fisher from staff, students, members of the community regarding specific board action, board conduct, and that's why we're here tonight going over these things. Sorry to have to be doing this. It's not a fun place to be, but it's necessary to protect the board as a whole and to just ensure that we're called to a higher standard. We essentially, as a board, have 4 options. Option 1, no action at all. You are not obligated to take any action. As a board, I have shared this information with you. The board as a whole decided it was worthy of discussion. That's what we're here doing tonight. You're not obligated to do anything with it. Option 2, I have circulated in advance a resolution, which is essentially just a general statement that's highlighting our renewed expectation of strict adherence to the board member code of ethics. No one person is called out. It's just a general recommitment to doing what we're supposed to do. Option 3 would be as permitted in the code of ethics. I think it's been read already that if a breach of the code of ethics occurs, disciplinary action in the form of sanction may happen. Probably the most commonly used sanction is a censure, meaning just a public reprimand. So I have circulated in advance. It's actually very similar language to the resolution, but would just specifically identify board members who are being called out for certain violations. A censure, just to calm everyone's nerves, does not remove a member from office. He would still retain title, power to vote. There are no legal consequences that come with that. It was just a public reprimand. The 4th option would be a sanction, but beyond a censure or public reprimand, a loss of privilege to go along with that. Examples being, the inability to participate in the graduation ceremony, the inability to participate in committee meetings for a period of time, things of that nature where you're not eliminating a vested right that the board member has, but just a loss of privilege. So those are our essentially 4 options. Happy to walk back through those if necessary, Mr. Chairman, but if there's clarity from the board on what the options are, I can go sit down.
Okay, yeah, please have a seat. The board was provided this information, I believe it was around noon yesterday, so everyone's had a chance to read and review. We've heard the information presented by our board attorney and a brief overview of the options. So it's left to the board, so what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt the resolution as provided to the board in option 2.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Taylor to adopt the general resolution, which is presented as option 2. And that was seconded by Mr. Humphries. Are there any, now, this is where we'll have questions or discussion. Again, as I mentioned, we'll do one round and limit comments to 3 minutes. I believe Ms. Bridges has the timer ready to go. So, Mr. Blanton?
You bet. I laid my hand on a Bible 12 years ago, and each time I've been elected. And I won, and I swore to hold up for the United States, state of North Carolina, and the citizens of Cleveland and the taxpayers of Cleveland County. I was going to read this, but I think I pretty well got it memorized. I have stood for every last school and every last person. And I have directed anybody that calls me with an issue, a bullying or whatever, to go through the chain of command. If you don't get what you want, come back and I'll give you the next step, and that would be to the superintendent. I have done that religiously for 12 years. I did make that, I did not give no pictures out. They asked me for pictures. There was one news place, and it's went all the way to England, and it's got my picture, my campaign picture. I didn't talk to none of those people. But I was angry because what happened in that school when they could have been somebody hurt, sliding on oil, or whatever. But we started here, and there was 2 people talked about, basically. We forgot about the complaint. Why was it not brought out about the complaint to the Board of Trustees at a community college, that stuff that was brought out in closed session? And so if they come a vote to this board, he's going to have to excuse himself because he said he's talked to Miss Apperly and 100% everything was okay. And I'm talking about our chair. Why was that complaint not brought out right here tonight, just like it did against Ronnie Gregg and Danny Blanton? I have always stood up for Burns High School. There are people in here knows that I have. For their athletics, everything, financially, and the whole 9 yards. At every one of our schools, I do not treat no school no different from the other. Even when my daughter was a coaching, I did not pull for her. I keep it neutral. That's a promise. But I laid my hand on the Bible to do what's best for Cleveland County and what's the best for our children. And I will do the best of my ability as long as I'm on this board. That is a promise. And one more thing, that if somebody calls me and they're a general statute, I have it right here
Mr. Blanton, your time's expired.
that I will not give
Is there
up
anyone else
nobody's,
that has
I
any-
will not give up
Mr.
nobody's name that gives me information.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Grigg?
Since most of these complaints are about me, I just wanted to say that a lot of it's tied into Facebook, and I've got actually screenshots of everything from the comments right here. And it actually contradicts a lot of these complaints that came out to me, and it came from one person. And it's obvious right here in these texts or posts. I did make a comment which was a slurred language to a coach. And I actually said I didn't care what he thought about me because he continually was beating me down, which I have the text, beating me down and calling me everything from ignorant and everything else and saying that I didn't know what I was talking about. You know, our schools are not to play in. We have to have some control. Somebody could have got hurt in that school with the baby oil that was on the floor, Vaseline on the toilets. But you know,
Yep, I agree. You're starting to get into the
Okay.
prank itself. You need to
Okay.
keep it to board member conduct. Thank you, Mr. Short.
but not one parent or not one teacher brought up the safety issue of being at that school. Nobody. And that concerns me because you were more focused on what you were going to do to me than what you were going to do about the situation. So, you know, it is what it is. A lot of mistakes were made. They wasn't just made by me. They were made by the public. They were made by students. They were made by the teacher of that school. But you want to
Again,
turn
Mr. Gregg,
everything,
you need to keep it to board
you
member
want to
conduct.
turn everything
Mr.
to
Gregg,
me.
let me finish my point. You need to keep it to board member conduct and not bring in personnel, students, or anything. Okay,
You want
thank
to turn everything back on me to take the blame off of somebody else for what they did. I'm not going to apologize for what I did. If that's what anybody wants, you'll be sitting here all night. Because I actually don't have anything to apologize for. I didn't paint,
I'll give you a timeout. Hold on just a second.
okay.
So we stopped at 33 seconds. Folks, there's no doubt this is emotional on both sides. There's opinions both ways. This meeting here is for this board to discuss business and to discuss board member conduct. And if we can't hear, we can't make a proper decision. So we understand you may be plus or minus for one or the other. That's perfectly fine. But please keep the noise down, keep the clapping comments so that we can hear, because I want to be able to hear what every board member says. I know every member up here wants to hear, so that we can make the decision we have to. This is not being taken lightly by anybody. 28 seconds, it went about 6 seconds, so you got about 34 left.
Okay. But as I said, you know, a lot of people made mistakes. I'm not the only person that made mistakes in this whole thing. The biggest focus that I have on this school system is not on one school. It's not on one student. It's on the whole county, and we have a lot of schools in this county. You know, it seems to me that, like I said, the focus was brought down on me instead of the real issue. And like I said, I'm not going to apologize for what I did. I've already said mistakes were made. So that's pretty much where I stand. And, you know, whatever the board decides to do with me, that's fine. But, you know, just
Your
remember,
time's expired. I gave you
the
the
board
extra
has
6
made
seconds.
mistakes also.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Spurman.
So I talk a lot about military, because I was military for a long time, 26 years. And I believe when you are part of something bigger than yourself, then sometimes you have to sit back and watch. I believe that you can't take a shirt on and off at will. I believe once we were elected to the board, we're always the board. If I walk downtown somewhere and one of you see me, you're not going to look at me like, oh, that's Walter Sperling. He lives in Bellwood. You're going to look at me like, oh, that's Walter Sperling. He's part of the board. He's part of the Board of Education. I can't take my shirt off, and my board member's shirt off, and say things as an individual and people not look at it like I'm part of a board. or I'm part of something greater than myself. So, I think we are here not to talk about what happened at Burns. We are here because of what happened at Burns. And we are here because I believe there are instances where there are board members that get involved in the conversation when we should sit back and listen to the conversation. It is not our duty. It is nowhere in our description. Matter of fact, it is in the code of ethics that we signed when we put our hand on the Bible. It says we will not investigate. We will turn over evidence to the proper people, being the administrators or the superintendent. When we get involved in the fray, when we get involved in the investigations, all we do is muddy the waters. We have to let the process work. Now, if the process, if we believe at the end of that process that the right outcome did not come, then there are methods described in policy for anyone that wants to can come in front of the board. But there's a method to do it. And just like our judicial system for police officers and judges, you can't skip over 2 or 3 of those levels. You have to go through the proper channels to get to the proper level, or everything gets
Mr.
confused.
Stone, you're expired. Anyone else on this motion? All right, then I'm going to call for the vote. The motion before us is to adopt option 2 in our packet, which is basically for the public, it's a general resolution that the board accepts, adopts, and follows the code of ethics. So those in favor of the motion, if you'd raise your hand.
That's something we're supposed to vote on too?
Yes, you still have your ability to vote.
And this is the same, basically the same resolution, the same
It's what
information about the code of ethics.
It's what Ms. Saint shared in our packet yesterday. So let me get that again. Those in favor of the motion, if you'd raise your hand.
I'd
Any
like to ask
opposed?
a question about that.
We've already had time for questions. So any opposed to that motion?
I want my attorney to read that.
I need a
code of
vote.
ethics.
Are you for the motion or opposed to the motion?
Yeah, I'll raise my hand.
Okay, so that motion carries 8-1.
That's right, because I ain't broke no laws, no ethics.
All right. Does the board wish anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I move to combine options 3 and 4 to sanction Mr. Grigg and Mr. Blanton via censure and via the loss of privilege being able to formally participate in the year of graduation and from participating in any committee meetings until September of 2023.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Stop, because I don't want to have to remove anyone. Y'all need to be able to hear it too, but we can't have outbursts. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
So the motion, as I understand it, is to combine options 3 and 4. Let me get back to that page.
Did we not just vote on option number 1? We just voted on option 1, didn't we? I'm sorry, option number 2. I'm sorry, option number 2.
So that carried.
Okay.
And so now we have a motion, as I understand it, to combine options 3 and 4, which calls for a specific censure of Mr. Grigg and Mr. Blanton, along with loss of privilege, which would be no formal participation in graduation ceremonies this year, and suspension from committee activities until September of '23. So this is another motion. We have a motion and a second, so we'll treat this like the first round. We'll go around. Anyone that has comments, you have 3 minutes to comment or ask questions on this one? Who wants, anybody have questions or comments?
So,
Mr. Bridges?
I thought we were just voting on one resolution tonight. Was that not what we were supposed to do, just vote on one resolution? So now we're adding a motion to two.
It's up to the board to vote on as many
Okay,
actions it deems fit.
okay.
Do you have anything else you would like to use for your 3 minutes?
Well, I mean, I think that as a board as a whole, I think that there's been a lot of things that everybody's done wrong here, the community and the board both. So I think we should take option two. We've had teachers that have said stuff about the situation. We've had parents, we've had the board.
Mr. Bridges, this is about board member
Okay.
conduct. It doesn't matter what anyone in the community
Right.
has done, we can't police them, and it's up to the Dr. Fisher to police personnel. That's not
Okay.
ours. We're here to police ourselves.
Okay.
Okay? Anyone else? Mr. Blanton?
Yes, sir. Well, why are you not in the middle of this?
You've not made a motion.
I
to make
made a
some-
motion, Miss Lee a while ago. Okay, I make a motion.
Hold on. You are out of order. There's already a motion and a second on the floor. Right now, we're
Okay.
discussing that one. When we're finished with that, you're allowed to make whatever motion
Okay.
is appropriate.
I will.
I'd be glad for you to. Do you have anything else for your 3 minutes? You've got 2:40 left for this particular motion.
Sounds like a little railroading going on here, kettle calling the pot black. That's what I think,
Mr.
because I
Blanton,
know how I stood for this county.
you're out of order again. We're discussing the motion at hand. These rules were passed out yesterday. You've had plenty of time to review that. You know what the rules are. So-
Okay, the rule was passed out about you yesterday, too.
No, we're following the rules. Again.
Why didn't the lawyer bring it out when she brought it all out right up there?
She did. She did say that I had a complaint against me, not the
Okay,
board.
but you wouldn't put in any of it.
She mentioned it. She talked about it.
Oh.
So, I mean,
Okay,
you,
all
okay,
right,
are
go
you-
ahead.
all right, anyone else? Mr. Spurlock?
So, again, I seconded that because I do believe that actions have consequences, good or bad. If you do something good, your consequences are good, usually good. If you do something bad, your consequence is bad. It doesn't have to be a lifelong consequence. It can be a consequence that lasts a short period of time. But I think when we make mistakes, there are consequences. And I believe, I don't believe anybody on this board has a bad heart. I don't. But I do believe that there are some people on this board that do not understand how a board works. They don't understand Robert's Rules of Order. They don't understand how to be part of something greater than themselves. So, I seconded this motion so that because there are consequences.
Okay. Anyone else on this? Mr. Grigg?
Mr. Spurling, I appreciate that, but you know, when we talk about consequences, we seem to be forgetting what brought us all here and those consequences. You know, as I said earlier, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one in this room that's made mistakes. Mistakes were made right here, sitting right here. Mistakes were made out there. Mistakes were made by a lot of people in this situation. I own up to my mistakes. And I'll accept whatever conditions you put behind me. But just know that when you talk about consequences, you should be talking about the full consequences of the actions of what brought us all here, and not just about me and Danny Blanton.
Anyone else? Mr. Shores?
Comments are made. I was voted in by the people. That is true. We were voted in by the people to be a board member, not the board. This is not a dictatorship country we live in. All branches of government have policies and rules they follow. Before running for the board, I hope everyone understood that the board is a self-governing board and has established policies that are expected to be followed by all board members. We've had a board member say in open meeting, "What are you going to do to me if I violate the policy?" That statement disturbs me. It also says a lot about their view of abiding by policy. Our main goal is to make policy for the Cleveland County school systems. Are we saying, say as I do as I say, not as I do? The situation we're here discussing has caused a black eye to Burns High School and to the Cleveland County schools in general. There's definitely a violation of policy section 1010, board authorities and duties, which states, "Be an advocate for the school system, for employees, and especially for students in all interaction with governmental entities and the public." The information provided that I've seen does not see any advocacy. I see critics and adversary comments. And the governing principle, Code 1100, states safe, orderly, and inviting environment. A system of excellent schools creates and maintains a safe and orderly environment where staff and students are focused on and excited to be at. Why would a board member state to the media some of the school cameras were turned off? First, that is not true, and even if it were, that is unacceptable in my opinion. The media stories are shared worldwide, and you have just told the criminal element of society that cameras are off in a school. What total disregard for the safety and faculty of those at Burns High School. Mr. Blanton and Mr. Grigg stated the media have received texts from upset teachers. I asked Dr. Fisher this morning, had he received any of the texts and or sources from the text? He said no. Mr. Grigg and Mr. Blanton shared videos and or pictures to the media. I asked Dr. Fisher this morning, had we received any information from Mr. Grigg or Mr. Blanton on where they obtained the videos and or pictures for his investigation? He said no. So as of this moment, information is being withheld from Dr. Fisher to help him investigate this situation. Comments were made about Vaseline on doorknobs and toilets and baby oil on the floor. As of this morning, Mr. Grigg nor Mr. Blanton had shared their information to Dr. Fisher. I know we're in a court of public opinion right now, but if we were in a criminal court proceeding, all these pictures and videos and what I was told information would be thrown out because of the inability to verify it, and it would be ruled as hearsay. Role of board members is handling complaints, Code 2122. An individual Cleveland
Mr. Shores, your time's expired. Anyone else on this motion?
I'll finish Joel's thought. So that's one policy we did not get to, was 2122. It's the role of board members in handling complaints. It states that an individual county board of education member who receives complaint or inquiry from a parent or interested citizen concerning a school matter will refer the complaint to the appropriate school administrator and, where appropriate, advise the complainant of the procedures in place for making such complaints. The board member may also refer the complaint to the superintendent, who shall determine an appropriate means of responding to the complaint. Individual board members will refrain from taking individual action with regard to such complaints other than referring them to proper administrative employee.
Thank you. Anyone else? I want to summarize a couple of things on this, so if you'd start my timer, please. All of this is centering around due process. We are a country of rules and laws. I see Mr. Harris back there. I took civics, and we had courts and laws under him 100 years ago, it feels like. But all of this centers around due process. As board members, when we receive any information or complaints, we send it to the superintendent so he can do his job. When we get into it ourselves, we prohibit him from doing his job. How can we hold him responsible for doing his job if we're doing it for him? And, you know, we basically make him unfireable. If he does mess up his job, we can't do anything to him because we've muddied the waters, we've got in there, and his attorney will love that. I've explained from this dais several times that our policies are all on due process. If you're a student and you have a problem with your teacher, you can run it up the chain of command. There are policies in place to do that. There are forms to fill out. It says specifically what to do. If you don't know what to do, we will help you get there. Not we as a board, but our administrative staff will help you do that. If you're a parent and you have an issue, or if you're a teacher and have an issue, you're an employee and have issues. There are plenty of policies in place that step you through that. I have said from this dais, if you will go through those steps and cross them off, and you don't get where you need to go, if you don't get the answer you're looking for, if you're not satisfied, and you appeal to the board, I guarantee you, you will get a hearing before the board. I won't guarantee you an outcome, I will guarantee you a hearing. And as chair, I have a right to pick a small subcommittee to hear those complaints. I'm not even gonna do that, you'll get a hearing before the full board. I'm not gonna play these judicial games that some of our judges do. So, due process, remember that, that's what all of this centers around. So I'll stop right there. Anyone else have comments on this second motion? So the motion we have before us is to combine options 3 and 4. So this would be again, this is the censure information provided by Ms. Sink to the board in the information packet. So this would be a censure of board members Grigg and Blanton, along with loss of privilege, which would include no formal participation in graduation ceremonies for 2023 and suspension from committee activities until September of 23. So I'm going to call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion, if you'd raise your hands. Any opposed? So that motion carries 6-3. Is there any other action the board would like to take?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that the complaint against you that, and we're going to go on to Mr. Fitch's motion that
Okay,
you be
hold
removed.
just a second. Before you make that motion, since that involves me, I'm stepping away. Mr. Vice Chairman, I hate to dump it on you, but if you would take care of this one.
All righty. I wasn't expecting that. All right. All right. Go ahead with your motion, Mr. Martin.
I'd like to make a motion that, Mr. Queen, because it wasn't brought up of what he done, and he violated our closed meeting rules, investigating at Burns High School, talking to the,
Okay, all right. Let me,
all of that. I want to make a
well-
motion just like Mr. Fitch did.
okay. It's my understanding,
Option
That-
2 and 3.
and could I get the attorney back up here just for a second? Would you please review the? Okay, all right, all right.
I don't think he knows what the motion is.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm wanting to clarify. I'm trying to clarify. The information that you have concerning Mr., would you go over that again, please?
Regarding Mr.
What was here,
Chairman
what was
Queen.
brought before the board tonight?
Email 7.
Email 7.
Yes, sir. That was an email received by one of the trustees
Okay.
of the Cleveland Community College. He had issued a complaint against Chairman Queen regarding an email that Chairman Queen had sent to the Board of Trustees of the Cleveland Community College in his capacity as a Cleveland Community College trustee. I did not reference it in my 5 topics
Okay.
because that email went to a closed group of people. But the board does have that email in front of them for
Okay.
their review. In the event that they see differently than me, that it would
Okay.
fall under one of those categories of violation, but I did not reference it specifically as I didn't see it squarely fitting within one of those categories of violation.
All right.
May I-
Mr. Blanton, if you would form your motion based on the information in the packet that we all have seen.
Right.
Okay?
All right, I'd like to make a motion based on the general resolution highlighting the renewal and expecting and restrict a board member for the code of ethics and in any committees and graduations.
Okay. Are you saying you're making a motion for options 3 and 4?
Yes,
Okay. And would you complete the motion, please?
I would like to make that motion that he be removed.
Okay.
From that.
To Mr. Queen.
And also, I need to add this a little bit to it
Well,
because,
let me,
be-
before you go
because-
there, let me just say, okay?
okay,
We have to go based on what we have in our packet.
right?
Okay? So just make sure that you stick with what we have in our packet.
Okay, well, it's concerning this deal.
Okay,
They were going to leave this complaint that was on Mr. Queen out tonight. But I will say that you brought it up, this was part of what was brought this meeting for, and you said, no, it needs to be added, but it didn't get really,
okay. Well,
get added in
that-
detail.
That's why I asked the attorney to come up and go over it again. We all have it in our packet. So I'm still, you are,
And that was
so
closed
far I've
session.
got that you want to sanction Mr. Queen
Right,
with 4 and 5,
3 and
3 and 4, I'm sorry.
3 and 4.
3 and 4.
yes.
Is that just your motion?
That's my motion that he's out of, just like me and Ronnie Grigg is.
Based on the information that we have tonight?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. We have a motion. We have a second. All right,
Because he talked about closed session stuff.
okay, all right. I'm trying to stick with what we have in our packet, okay?
Okay.
All right? All right, well, I guess we'll do this 3-minute again. So, we got a motion and a second, and do we have any discussions? You have 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm confused because I literally sat here and read Mr. Ledford's email twice. and-
You want to see the letter that he wrote?
Okay, that's facts, not in evidence.
That, Mr. Button, that's why I said
That's
the
not
packet
you.
tonight,
Seen it.
okay?
See, you leave out things that's
No, I ain't
evidence.
left out nothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so there's
Hang it
facts,
up.
not in evidence, and, let me talk, please.
Turn the
Oh, okay,
microphone.
my bad, so it's facts, not in evidence, but also, from what I understand, I haven't read the letter, but the letter, from what I'm seeing, Kenna said it was from Mr. Queen as a Board of Trustee to his fellow Board of Trustee members. So that's a closed circuit. That has nothing to do with the Board of Education. If the Board of Trustees feel like they need to do something about it, that's their decision to make. I'm not going to involve myself in Cleveland Community College Board of
What
Trustees.
about our closed session stuff?
Mr. Blank, I'll give you
Okay.
3 minutes as
Okay.
well.
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Blank, would you like your 3 minutes now?
Well, what about him talking about closed session stuff?
Mr. Blanton, again, I'm taking over this meeting, and
Okay.
all I have to go on is what was in this packet. We have a letter in this packet from an individual at Cleveland Community College concerning, Mr. Attorney, could you just come up and read that, please? Well, I just want to make sure we get this right. All right.
Mr. Schwartz, just to clarify, you would like me to read email number 7?
Yes, please.
Absolutely. Okay. Email number 7, Ms. Sink, I'm writing this complaint about the chairman of the Board of Education for sending a memo to all Board of Trustees, Dr. Hurst and Ms. Blanton, Chief of Staff, about one of the trustees, quote, jumped into the fray of social media postings regarding the senior prank at Burns High School. That trustee was me. And this is from Mr. Kenneth Ledford.
Okay.
I posted my remarks on Facebook after reading the article in the Shelby Star. I was not representing myself as a member of the Board of Trustees, but only as a taxpayer from Cleveland County. I feel I have the prerogative to voice my opinion the same as any other citizen. For your information, I served on the Cleveland County Board of Education for a total of 26 years. The chairman posted information in his memo differently than the newspaper article. Yes, I did give my opinion of what I thought should be done, which I feel is typical for someone who has served as long as I did on the board. I did not, however, indicate what the board should do. I had also received information from citizens in the Burns area. The chairman also indicated that since he knew and supported her, everything was all right. This memo should not come from the chairman of the Board of Education to all trustees. If he has something against me, I feel he should call and discuss it with me personally instead of the whole Board of Trustees. Thank you for your attention to this matter,
Okay.
Mr. Kenneth Ledford.
All right. If everybody that has 3 minutes, Mr. Brown, I'll go back to you, would give your comments based on what she just read.
Well, my comments is because he gave closed session information out in,
I did not hear that in that, what she just read.
she didn't read his, she didn't read the letter that Robert Queen sent.
Well,
to the
that-
Board of
that's- Again,
Trustees.
I can only go by evidence that we have here, okay?
There was no attachment by Mr. Ledford. I don't have the correspondence.
Who needs to make this complaint then, I've got it right here, the letter that he sent to them.
So you're saying Mr. Ledford did not attach to you,
Mr. Ledford did not attach the correspondence.
the correspondence
provided by
about,
Chair
okay,
Perry.
all right, so we don't have that.
Okay.
Mr. Ledford didn't send it. Okay,
Well, I got it right here.
well, we can only go by
Okay.
what's right here. Yeah, okay?
Go ahead and do what you want to do.
I mean, no, I'm giving you 3 minutes. I mean, I don't want you to.
Well, there's no
go-
need me,
Okay. All
there's
right,
no
anybody
need me to
else?
say nothing else unless you want me to read the letter.
No, that's not what we're here about. We're here about what this is in here. Yes. Yeah, you can get 3 minutes.
Start now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I know it's 1:15, but we'll give you 3
Okay,
minutes.
so this is another instance where a board member on another board decided to take their shirt off and be an individual citizen instead of thinking they're not going to represent the entity that they're on. And it just so happens that Mr. Queen is on the same board with this gentleman. So all he was doing, in my opinion, he was simply telling another board member on this other board, on CCC's board, he didn't even call him out by name according to what he's written here. Because he said that member is me. So apparently Mr. Queen didn't even say who he was talking about. He was simply saying, maybe you ought to sit back and watch instead of getting mixed up in the fray. So, and according to his comments about he knows Miss Aberly, well, I mean, that's like me saying, I know you, Mr. Blanton. I mean, I can't find. Listen, I'm the first one to say a rule's a rule, and if I can find fault in this, in what we have in front of us, now I've never seen his email, I'll be honest, but if I could find fault in what we have in front of us, I'd be the first one to say, let's do something. But on top of that, we have done something for the whole board. We did pass option number 2, which is a reminder for the whole board to follow our code of ethics. So we've already done something to all of us.
Okay? Anybody else? All right.
3 minutes.
Yes, I'll give you 3 minutes.
So, since it's my 3 minutes, I'm going to read the letter, the email. I do serve on both boards. I'm on the Board of Trustees at Cleveland Community College, and I'm Board of Education for Cleveland County Schools. So I did, someone sent a screenshot of a Facebook comment to me and said, well, there's one of your CCC trustees. It was not a positive comment. So I sent an email to the trustees. Looks like it was Friday, May 26th at 10:24 in the morning. I did send it to the trustees, the president, and his chief of staff. Greetings, trustees. My apologies for having to send this, but one of the trustees has jumped into the fray of social media postings regarding the senior prank at Burns High School. As community leaders, I hope you guys can help squash some of the rumors and gossip that's going around. A senior prank did happen at Burns High School. The principal was present the whole time. Some students did things beyond what was agreed to. Once that started, the principal directed them to leave the building. The principal was able to clean up about 95% of the mess before start of school the next morning. She literally worked all night by herself. Custodians helped her finish in the morning. The only real damage was a microwave and 2 old wooden tables. Social media posts have greatly exaggerated almost every detail of the event. I could provide more details, but the matter is still being reviewed by the superintendent. Now, as a point of commentary, I defy anyone to show where that information was not already in the public domain Friday morning at 10:24. We hadn't even had our closed session when this email was written. So I can't I like to think I'm good, but I can't go back in time or read the future and tell stuff that hadn't even happened yet. So continuing on with the letter, email, if it means anything, I know the principal, I have spoken to her, and I support her 100%. Again, for commentary, I speak to Ms. Aberly, I speak to all the principals when I go to their schools. I've spoken to her at football games, I've spoken to her at basketball games, awards ceremonies, and other functions. Doesn't mean I called to investigate. Continuing on, she has done an excellent job at Burns High School. The community has taken her in, and she has created a new sense of community and pride at Burns. The Bulldogs have had an outstanding school year. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me directly. Please do not assume any truth in any social media post. And it's signed, "Thanks, Robert," and has my phone number there. At no time did I indicate I was representing the Board of Education. Now, again, I can't take my school board hat off or my trustee hat off. Everybody knows who I am. But Mr. Ledford, and I'll have a conversation with him, had he still been on the Board of Education, he would have broken policy because he went to the media and started saying things that the board had not approved him to do. So I think I'm done.
All right. Well, I'm going to take my 3 minutes, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Madam Attorney, but would you come back, please? Because I know that you're upheld to be fair and balanced. So I will ask you this question. Based on what you submitted to us and based on what you have heard from Mr. Queen, is there a violation of our code of ethics and/or policy?
Based on the information that I was provided by Mr. Ledford, I did not see a violation of our code of ethics.
Okay. All right.
Based on the information I received from Mr. Ledford, I did not
Okay.
see any violation of code of ethics.
All right. Thank you. All right. With everybody having a chance to speak 3 minutes, I'll go ahead and take the vote. All those in favor of the motion and second that was presented, raise your hand. All those opposed? The motion does not carry 6-3. Mr. Chairman, I turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Shores. Any other actions that the board needs to take this evening?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, hold on a second. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Shores. Who was the second?
Mr. Sperling.
Mr. Spurling. Those in favor, if you'd raise your hand. That carries 9-0. Thank you.